Good evening. It's Thursday, January 23rd. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's not an exact count, but it is a starting point. Early this morning, volunteers hit the streets of San Diego. What they found will play a big part in how the city and county meet the challenge of homelessness. Governor Gavin Newsom was part of San Diego's point-in-time count early this morning downtown. Every year, local leaders and volunteers fan out to get an estimate of the local unsheltered population.
Putting $42.2 million of emergency grants this month here into San Diego. We're putting temporary trailers, FEMA trailers that the state owns. We're sending them out throughout the state, and we're asking for an additional $750 million from the state of California.
And that was Governor Newsom talking about his push on homelessness during his second year in office. His budget plan sets aside $1 billion for the issue, and a recent executive order frees up some state property to provide housing. The point-in-time count involves more than those sleeping on the streets. This morning, volunteers went into the canyons where many unsheltered San Diegans live. Speak City Heights reporter Ebony Monet was there.
Linda Pennington knows the city's canyons better than most. As a community organizer with San Diego Canyonlands, she's been part of the fight to preserve the natural habitat for nearly 40 years.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Early Thursday morning, she ventured through Hollywood Canyon in City Heights looking for homeless camps.
This is all homeless, left behind by homeless.
Pennington was joined by a small group of volunteers.
We often clean this up ourselves, too.
In all, about 40 people searched City Heights Canyon.
Nothing up here.
They also checked alleyways and parks to find people living outside.
It's important to get up and do something. If nothing else, count them or identify them as someone in need of resources.
Within minutes, they spotted a man sleeping outside in Hollywood Park.
Good morning. Can we interview you? We have some $10 gift certificates if we can speak to you.
No.
Okay. All right.
The goal is to get a head count.
Can you tell me how many people? One or two? Are you alone?
Volunteers also ask survey questions, including whether the person being counted has ever been in foster care. The findings were then inputted into an app.
I would say 25 to 25 to 34. We're just guessing at this point.
Earl Shannon was one of a handful of people willing to share his story with Pennington's group.
I feel like we need more opportunities, because a lot of us, we made mistakes in the past and we want to change.
Advocates say the point-in-time count will ultimately help people like Shannon by determining how HUD dollars are allocated to address homelessness. Pennington says getting people sheltered and out of San Diego's canyons is good for them and the environment.
So it's very important for the safety of San Diego because of the fires, number one, because of the needles, unfortunately, because of the feces that goes into the open toilets and out to the storm drain, to the ocean, and the horrific trash.
Ebony Monet, KPBS News.
And local cities have established safe parking lots for those who live in their cars. And now Encinitas is moving ahead with its plan.
Motion carries with Kranz voting no.
Thank you. There you have it. Supporters cheered last night's 4-1 vote. It followed 4 hours of public comment. The resolution will allow a safe parking lot on Saxony Road operated by Jewish Family Service. The lot will have space for 25 cars and be available during overnight hours. Last year's point-in-time count estimated nearly 2,000 people were homeless in North County, including more than 100 in Encinitas. 3 American firefighters are dead after their aircraft crashed in Australia while fighting the devastating bushfires there. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar says the aircraft they were on had been stationed in Ramona as recently as this summer.
Australia has been burning for months. It started in July and hasn't stopped. An estimated 26 million acres have burned. 2,600 homes destroyed, and at least 31 people have died since September. That includes 3 American crew members of an air tanker being used to fight the bushfires on Thursday.
Tragically, there appears to be no survivors as a result of the crash down in the snowy Monero area. It's impacted heavily with the ground, and initial reports are that there was a large fireball associated with the impact of the plane as it hit the ground. Our thoughts and prayers are with the 3 occupants.
The names of the crew members have not been released, but California Governor Gavin Newsom says they are from California. Officials say they were in the C-130 tanker that was known as Zeus and was recently stationed in Ramona for pilot training. CAL FIRE will get a C-130 permanently in Ramona for the 2021 fire season.
It's incredibly devastating. Our pilots here are very shook up. The firefighting community is very tight, and when it comes to aviation, the aviation community is incredibly tight as well. So having those two components combined together, I know our pilots here today are pretty shook up.
Approximately 100 American firefighters have traveled to Australia to help battle the bushfires there. 20 are from California. So far, the Americans who have gone are mostly federal firefighters. It's unclear if the 3 who died are federal firefighters or aviation contractors.
Ultimately, our job, firefighting, is just inherently dangerous. When you're talking about ground resources, it's quite the struggle, but when you add in the aviation component, the conditions that these guys are flying in, with the winds that they're typically flying in, the poor visibility, the crazy terrain, you really have a lot of things stacked up against you.
Today, the flags at Ramona Airport are being flown at half-staff in honor of the lives tragically lost on the other side of the world. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
California might force power companies to pay back people who lost money during preemptive power outages. A bill under consideration would require investors-owned utilities to set up a fund to compensate people for things like lost wages and spoiled food. Last fall, SDG&E and PG&E enacted shutoffs during windstorms. The move is to prevent any fires by downed power lines. The bill would also ban power companies from raising rates to cover losses from a blackout. House Democrats say no president has abused his power the way President Donald Trump did toward Ukraine. And that was the focus during another full day of opening statements in the impeachment trial. Karen Kafa has our update from Washington.
As House Democrats enter day 2 of their opening arguments on the Senate floor,
the Senate will now hear you.
The debate over whether President Trump's impeachment trial will include witness testimony continued off the floor. Some Republicans finding the arguments of House Democrats repetitive.
It seemed yesterday was like Groundhog's Day because we heard what we had heard the day before, and I'm expecting more of the same today.
It's just repeating. I'll be interested to see how the president's attorneys respond to this.
Democrats trying to use that as a point to persuade them to join their call.
If my Republican colleagues are interested in some new evidence on top of the very substantial House record, there's a very simple answer. Vote with Democrats to call relevant witnesses and documents.
Wednesday, the House Democrats offered a detailed chronology with an intense focus on the July 25th phone call between President Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky. Today, they're digging deeper into the charge of abuse of power.
The articles and the evidence conclusively establish that President Trump has placed his own personal political interests first.
The president's defense team will likely begin their arguments Saturday.
We're going to begin our robust case when the Senate says it's time to start.
A vote on whether to subpoena more witnesses or documents would come after defense has concluded their opening arguments and senators' questions. In Washington, Karen Kafa, KPBS News.
You can watch, stream, and listen to the impeachment trial on all KPBS platforms. And a programming note, KPBS Midday Edition will air daily 9 a.m. on KPBS Radio due to our impeachment coverage. One of the Republicans running against President Trump was in San Diego today. Former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld brought his campaign to the Mount Hope neighborhood. He took part in a forum with civil rights activist Shane Harris and a group of local faith leaders on topics ranging from homelessness to criminal justice reform.
Well, I've got a lengthy record of working with African American leaders in my 2 terms as governor of Massachusetts and in my 5 years as U.S. Attorney in Boston, in areas as diverse as criminal justice, education, housing, and just making sure that communities of color participate and have a seat at the economic table where all the goodies are divided.
And Weld has been an outspoken critic of President Trump and says he supports his impeachment. San Diego's mayor is in Washington this week, and he says he's making progress on a major transit project. Kevin Faulkner tweeted this picture with the acting secretary of the Navy. He says the agreement is part of a plan to redevelop the Navwar facility that will include a trolley connection to the airport. Sandag reached its agreement with the Navy last summer. The property is located near Old Town. Development is still several years away. There are just a few of the estimated 4,000 families separated by President Trump's asylum policy. Last night, they were reunited in a tearful scene at LAX. 9 parents were allowed back to the U.S. under the order from a federal judge in San Diego. The judge ruled they were illegally misled or coerced into giving up their asylum rights in 2018.
Why do you feel good right now?
Well, because I never saw my dad for a couple weeks. Not a couple weeks, but for 2 years. Almost 2 years, I guess. And now I get to see him.
And this group is from Guatemala, and they'll have to check in with ICE during their stay. Companies that work to detain immigrants are trying to boost their capacity in California. In the San Joaquin Valley, 2 prisons would be converted to detention centers. As Amber Frias reports, the community is debating between immigrant rights or new jobs.
Chants, cheers, and colorful signs united a group of immigration advocates against a proposal that would bring 2 detention centers to McFarland.
So we are in opposition because there will be fear in the community.
The rally was against Geo Group, a private company that wants to turn Golden State Modified Community Correctional Facility and Central Valley Modified Community Correctional Facility into detention centers. This would expand Kern County's capacity for immigrant detention from 400 to 1,800. The company says the facilities would increase economic development in a city in dire need of it.
There are many benefits regarding the repurposing of the Golden State and Central Valley facilities as annexes.
According to Geo Group, available jobs would increase from 154 to 173. Entry-level salaries would increase by $60,000. Geo Group would pay the city $1 per day per bed, totaling over $500,000 annually. $500,000 in property taxes and $1.5 million in utilities.
GEO does not stand for Gathering Enforcement Operations. It stands for giving employees an opportunity.
Those 4 Geo Group didn't take long to join the rally.
Nobody wants any kind of setback or hardships or anything like that. We pretty much just want to continue working with the company of Geo. It's been really good.
S. Bradley is a corrections officer at Mesa Verde Detention Center. He and other employees made a case for their jobs and families.
We want jobs! We want. And that was Amber Frias reporting. The city of McFarland will hold another meeting on the proposal in the coming weeks. The governor of Oklahoma says he's returning the favor when it comes to a travel ban for state employees. An executive order prohibits non-essential travel to California, with exceptions for college sports and business recruiting. Oklahoma's governor says it's in response to a law California passed in 2018. The law enacted a similar ban after Oklahoma allowed adoption agencies to deny placement to same-sex parents. The travel industry has been rocked in recent days by a new strain of coronavirus from China. Airports are on high alert. Here in San Diego, a local company is working on a new vaccine. KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento tells us more.
This is a picture of the DNA.
Dr. Kate Broderick gestures to a computer image at Inovio Pharmaceuticals that shows a coronavirus DNA. It looks like a black vertical bar with horizontal white dashes. Broderick says the image is part of the lab's computer-based approach that'll have a vaccine ready for human testing by this summer, which is much faster than the traditional process.
They're generally proteins, so they have to be made in chickens' eggs. And that whole process can, take multiple months, if not years.
The lab received $9 million from the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations to create the new novel virus vaccine. Broderick says the lab has had success with a similar situation in the past.
If you remember the Zika outbreak that happened a few years ago, we went from virus sequence to treating our first patient within 7 months. And for this particular vaccine, we hope to be able to even be faster than that.
Just manufacturing the flu vaccine each year can take 6 months. Inovio is also part of the president's effort to overhaul how that vaccine is produced. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
The Doomsday clock is ticking closer to midnight, according to some of the world's leading scientists. Today, they reset it to 100 seconds before midnight. 2 years ago, it was set at 11:58 p.m. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists in Washington says the spread of nuclear weapons and climate change are the biggest factors. Former California Governor Jerry Brown now works with the group. Storms are staying to our north, leaving a sunny outlook for us through the weekend. Lauren Rainson has our forecast.
Good evening. The hits today just keep on coming for areas to our north, though, slamming the northwest coast. Yes, we have been finding occasional Pacific moisture working its way onshore, and that's why we're seeing a great deal of clouds out there, especially north of the Los Angeles area. Back closer to home, we have been seeing a lot more breaks in the cloud cover, leading to more sunshine and overall quiet, smooth sailing conditions as you're heading into tonight. 44 in Oceanside, widespread lows in the lower to the middle 40s. Mount Laguna, you're going to bottom out near 37 after midnight. Our futurecast from here on out is pretty sparse. We will wake up to a few morning clouds and maybe some coastal fog. You're going to break through that fairly quickly. We'll emerge with more of that afternoon sunshine to close out another work and school week. With additional mild, dry conditions, all of that moisture is going to be held in check to our north. At the very most, northern to central California will be getting back to that rain a lot sooner than we're going to be, let's just say that. A day to grab the shades as you're soaking up that sunshine, with highs in the upper 60s along the coast to the lower 70s inland. On Saturday, central to northern California, there goes that more round of rainfall. We're going to remain dry, though, as you're going into the weekend. Heads up if you have any travel plans throughout the weekend. A couple of problem areas to take note of, one being in the northeast. A slow-moving winter storm system's continuing to track eastward. Again, with the northwest, they absolutely cannot catch a break, so keep in mind if your travel plans take you in those regions. At home along the coast, plenty of sunshine with a high of 68 through Saturday. Slightly cooler on Sunday, but we'll bounce back to the upper 60s into early next week. Inland, a mixer of sun and clouds, lower to the middle 70s throughout the weekend. A little cooler on Sunday, lower 70s into early next week. In the mountains, with temperatures in the 50s, lower 50s Sunday to Monday at the high of 52 by next Tuesday. Also need the shades in the desert. Grab the hat, upper 70s Friday to Saturday. Middle to the upper 70s Sunday through next Tuesday. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Lauren Rainson. Back to you.
KPBS is bringing you special coverage of the primary election with an in-depth look at the races and the candidates. 3 people are running to be San Diego's top lawyer, including the woman who currently holds the job. More now from KPBS reporter Joe Hong.
All 11,000 plus employees count on the city attorney for legal advice every day.
Since she was elected in 2016, City Attorney Mara Elliott says she's most proud of her work in gun safety. She spoke to KPBS at the Mission Bay Playground, where she first announced the safe storage of firearms ordinance.
We are the lead agency in the state of California when it comes to protecting people from folks who are dangerous and have access to guns. So we're removing guns from the streets. We're protecting children so people don't have to worry when they send their kids to school.
Her main opponent, Corey Briggs, has filed dozens of open records lawsuits against the city, and he says his work as a transparency advocate won't change once he's elected. He said he'd establish a residents advisory committee that will hold weekly meetings with the city attorney's office.
And every month they will get to haul me into a room, public meeting. You're welcome to go, press is welcome to be there. And these folks will get to ask questions about how I'm operating the city attorney's office. Why did I do this? Why am I not focusing on that?
The third candidate is Peter Message, who has experience as a deputy city attorney in both the civil and criminal divisions. He said he will improve the city attorney's outreach to communities, focusing on relationships between neighborhoods and law enforcement. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
And tonight, we're wrapping up our look at the San Diego City Council races. In District 1, there's been a shift in who is running, with Democrats now dominating the field. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen met the candidates.
Over the course of my career, I had the privilege of working all over San Diego and kind of seeing, front row seat what was good and what was bad about how the city does things, and I think we can do better.
Aaron Brennan is a retired firefighter and Navy reservist. He says he wants to focus on increasing the number of police officers and fire stations in San Diego and repaving streets.
Take a drive around just about any part of San Diego and you feel like you need a Humvee in lots of parts of the city.
While housing affordability often gets the most attention at City Hall, Brennan says District 1 has other things to worry about.
Hardly anybody in District 1 is suffering from a housing affordability issue. It's the highest median price of a home by district easily. And so for the voters of District 1, they're not as concerned about it from a personal standpoint. They are concerned about, you're going to build affordable housing, where are you going to build it?
Brennan says neighborhoods with access to mass transit, like University City and Sorrento Valley, are good places to start adding density.
And I've watched us here in San Diego chase our tails around a bunch of side issues for a long time, such as spending 20 years arguing about football teams, while our roads don't get paved and people end up homeless.
Will Moore is a small business attorney. We meet him at UCSD, where he says thousands of talented students are ready to leave San Diego because it's too expensive.
When we start telling our best and brightest college students who come here from all over the country to attend college here that they can't stay, then we are crippling our future as a city and as a region. And the parents in this district are painfully aware that that's the problem their kids are facing, because their kids tell them every day.
Another top issue for Moore is climate change, which he says is a serious threat to District 1's low-lying coastal neighborhoods like La Jolla Shores.
The most important thing we can probably do on climate is move people from out of town, where they have 2-hour commutes from Temecula, to live here in San Diego close to where they work, because those commutes make up a full half of our carbon emissions in this city.
I've got a 5.5-month-old little daughter. I want to make sure we leave this place better than how we found it for the next generation.
Harid Puentes, who goes by H, recently led a project to create Connect All, a startup accelerator in southeast San Diego for low to moderate income and minority entrepreneurs. He says that's the kind of leadership he would bring to city government.
So I've been a champion in this city for inclusive economic growth, and that is an example of how we thought differently, thought creatively. We were able to build consensus around the idea between what was happening up here on the Mesa and the innovation that's happening, and bring that down south of the 8.
Puentes says he also wants to focus on modernizing the city's technology.
Look at our performance and analytics department, give our chief data officer a little bit more teeth, and so that we're much more responsive to what citizens need.
No other candidate has the breadth and depth of experience that I have.
Joe LaCava is a civil engineer by trade and a longtime activist on civic issues. Housing is one of his top issues, and he says the city is doing some things right.
The devil is in the details, but I think generally making it a little bit easier, a little bit less expensive to build housing is what we need to do to support the home building industry, because ultimately they're the ones that produce the majority of the homes. The concern that I have is that we're not really addressing the needs of the folks that are at the moderate income or the lower income.
LaCava says he has a track record of building coalitions and bringing people together on divisive issues like growth and development.
What I've demonstrated over the years is the ability to bring people from different sides, not to polarize the conversation, but to bring people together, not point fingers or point blame to any individual group or stakeholder, but to say we're all San Diegans. We need to do this for the benefit of San Diegans today and the San Diegans of the future.
District 1 will have the most candidates of any other race on the city ballot. Only the top 2 finishers in March will make it through to the general election on November 3rd. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
You can watch or stream our coverage anytime at kpbs.org and our KPBS podcasts. We'll have more tomorrow, including a look at Measure A, the big housing measure affecting North County.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the second day for the prosecution, abuse of power. The Democrats continue to make their case for removing President Trump. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. A classic film showcase returns to the Ken Cinema. Cinema junkie Beth Accomando will have her review. And a reminder, our schedule is changing during the impeachment coverage. As a result, KPBS Roundtable will air at 9:30 a.m. on KPBS Radio. Finally tonight, a farewell to a familiar voice and face for KPBS viewers.
Good evening, I'm Jim Lehrer. On the NewsHour this Wednesday, it was another heavy day of news on the Middle East.
Jim Lehrer, former anchor of the PBS NewsHour, has passed away. His family says he died in his sleep at his home. He was 85 years old. Lehrer founded the NewsHour program in 1975 and anchored the show for 36 years. He was known to wider audiences as a moderator of presidential debates. His last was between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney in 2012. PBS NewsHour profiled his career when he retired a few years ago. Here's Jim Lehrer on how he approached his job as a journalist.
Do nothing I cannot defend. Cover, write, and present every story with the care I would want if the story were about me. Assume there is at least one other side or version to every story. Assume the viewer is as smart and as caring and as good a person as I am. Assume the same about all people on whom I report. Assume personal lives are a private matter until a legitimate turn in the story absolutely mandates otherwise. Carefully separate opinion and analysis from straight news stories and clearly label everything. Do not use anonymous sources or blind quotes except on rare and monumental occasions. No one should ever be allowed to attack another anonymously. And finally, I am not in the entertainment business.
Some good words to live by. We bid him farewell. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.